the day after I woke up and told my wife, why did I do that? I don't know. I just don't know what the hell goes on. I remember one thing, I had a very hard moment in that part of my life, but I assure you in that age, I could have put that clown in the first round, but I sold my soul and I'm ashamed of it.
Is it true that you made $170 million from this fight?
I made a lot of money, the most money I've made ever.
60 million households, Jake.
250 million people.
Bro, that is so
It's all downhill
crazy.
from here.
No, for sure.
I peaked.
How do you think the Jake Paul Anthony Joshua fight plays out?
I don't know. I want to make sure. I believe it once I see him in the ring.
If Paul starts his boxing career earlier, could Jake Paul have been a champion?
Look, what just went down with Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul wasn't just another knockout. This was the moment reality crashed back into boxing and shattered everything we've been pretending was real. Joshua didn't just beat Jake Paul, he obliterated an entire fantasy and left Mike Tyson sitting there knowing he chose money over legacy. And now the whole sport looks scripted in a way it can never recover from.
I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. I told y'all, they made Mike Tyson retract his statement on Twitter. They made him rewrite a post on top of deleting a post. Yeah, I told you that fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul was rigged. I told you that. I don't care what Mike Tyson is saying now, he have to do that to secure his money. He's still an investment for future exhibitions or
Rewind and think about this, because what we witnessed wasn't actually a fight. It was years of illusion getting ripped apart in slow motion until a legitimate heavyweight reminded everyone what authentic violence looks like. And when that happened, the entire house of cards collapsed.
Sit down on a podcast one time and he talked about it. He said, I don't want to do an exhibition against Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
He said, I'm only doing real fights. And of course, I can't get up high in weight, but I'll fight him in a real fight at the weight that I'm at. But Jake Paul, I mean, as of right now, for what he's doing, it's good for what he's doing. But once he fights a real fighter, it's going to be bad.
That moment when Tyson watched Joshua destroy Paul ringside tells you everything. That wasn't surprise on his face. That was shame mixed with recognition. The kind of sick realization you get when someone else does exactly what you got paid not to do. Every instinct in Tyson's body was screaming because he knew he could have done the same thing to Jake anytime he wanted. And watching Joshua actually do it had to feel like getting punched in the gut all over again. Here's what makes this so brutal. Tyson absolutely could have finished Jake Paul whenever he felt like it. Everyone in that arena knew it, Jake knew it, and that's exactly why this Joshua knockout cuts so deep. It proves the danger was always there, and the restraint was always fake. Once that truth gets out, there's no stuffing it back in the box. No matter how many PR statements get released, the second Joshua dropped Paul in round 5, everything changed. Suddenly, every previous fight gets put under a microscope and fans start asking the same forbidden question. Why didn't this happen before? Why did someone else have to do what should have been done months ago? People want to call this a mismatch, but that's way too simple. This was reality reasserting itself after being suspended for too long. Joshua didn't even rush it, he stalked it methodically, which makes it absolutely terrifying. When a genuine fighter takes his time like that, it means he already knows how the story ends. Jake felt that certainty closing in on him round after round until the inevitable finally arrived. Round 6 didn't just land like a punch, it landed like a judgment. Not just the physical damage, but the meaning behind it. That right hand didn't just break bone, it shattered permission. Permission for this whole charade to keep masquerading as legitimate boxing. Once titanium plates enter the conversation, the jokes die immediately, and anyone still laughing is either in shock or in denial. Eddie Hearn's comment about giving Jake his debut and AJ giving him his retirement wasn't trash talk. That was a eulogy being read in real time. Promoters don't speak like that unless they genuinely believe the door just got slammed shut permanently. And if you think Jake wasn't hearing those words echo in his head while staring at hospital ceiling tiles, you're missing the psychological devastation entirely. Going back to Tyson's situation makes this even more painful. He held back and played it safe while Joshua tore the script to pieces. History only remembers one of those approaches, regardless of how big the paycheck was. Call it conspiracy if you want. But Tyson cracked the door open himself when he admitted he doesn't even remember the fight and woke up wondering why he went through with it. That's not satisfaction talking, that's regret. And regret like that gets heavier with time, not lighter. Joshua didn't need to say anything afterward because his performance said everything that mattered. When silence becomes the loudest voice in the room, it means the truth is too obvious to spin. Every influencer trying to box just felt their stomach drop, whether they want to admit it or not. Those broken jaw details paint an even darker picture that nobody wants to examine too closely. If one legitimate heavyweight can unravel years of carefully built hype in 6 rounds, how fragile was this entire ecosystem from the beginning? That question should make everyone uncomfortable because someone is definitely scrambling behind the scenes right now, trying to contain what this means for the future. Watching Tyson's face during that injury interview had to be torture. Biology doesn't lie and marketing can't argue with fractured bones. Seeing concrete proof of what real punching power accomplishes forces you to confront every moment you chose not to unleash it. That regret is probably eating at him way worse than he's willing to show publicly. Here's the time bomb. Nobody wants to acknowledge. If Tyson is now openly admitting that financial considerations influenced outcomes, how many other fights are about to get examined with fresh skepticism? Once trust erodes, it spreads like wildfire. Boxing has always survived on belief, and belief is hemorrhaging right now. What haunts me is how composed Joshua looked throughout the entire encounter. Calm fighters are the most dangerous, because they're the most honest. His composure felt like someone making a necessary correction, rather than chasing personal glory. And corrections don't stop with one target, they create ripple effects that expose other vulnerabilities. This story doesn't wrap up neatly with highlight reels and press conferences. The sudden silence afterward feels manufactured, and when things go quiet this abruptly, it usually means contracts are being renegotiated and narratives are being buried. Something uglier is definitely building, and when it finally breaks, this knockout will look like just the opening shot. Looking back, everything feels inevitable now. Like the sport itself got tired of pretending and decided to snap the rubber band back to reality. The line between entertainment and competition had been stretched so far it was begging to break, and Joshua happened to be standing there when it finally snapped. Confidence becomes arrogance without anyone noticing the exact moment it crosses that line. That's what doomed this entire experiment. Not the ambition or the money, but the belief that reality could be negotiated if you talked loud enough and built a big enough audience around the lie. There's something deeply disturbing about watching a narrative implode in real time because it exposes how much of what we consume as fans is built on trust. Once that trust fractures, you start questioning everything retroactively. How many moments you cheered for were genuine and how many were carefully constructed to protect a predetermined outcome. Joshua didn't just win a fight, he reintroduced consequences to a sport that had forgotten they existed. People aren't fully processing that yet because consequences don't trend well on social media, but they stick with fighters long after the cameras disappear and the tweets stop flying. The contrast between preparation and promotion is striking. One happens in silence, the other needs constant noise to survive. When they finally collide, silence always wins. Not dramatically, not loudly, just decisively, like gravity reminding everyone it was never impressed by the height. What really disturbs me is how normalized it became to treat legitimate fighters as obstacles in someone else's storyline instead of recognizing them as human beings with decades of experience and accumulated damage. Once you reduce them to plot devices, you forget they can end your night with one clean decision. There's genuine sadness in realizing that even legends aren't immune to the machinery. Even someone like Tyson can get pulled into the gravity of spectacle and money, which shows how powerful the system has become and how difficult it is to step outside once you're trapped inside. Most people don't fully grasp how rare it is to witness a moment that completely rewrites the emotional hierarchy of a sport. Suddenly, the loudest voices go silent, and the quiet professionals are the only ones left standing with their credibility intact. Every replay of that knockout feels heavier than the last, not because of the punch itself, but because of what it represents. A hard line drawn between legitimate levels, a reminder that experience isn't just time served but damage endured and lessons learned through pain. There's irony in how the pursuit of legitimacy accelerated the loss of illusion. Chasing real competition means eventually encountering it, and real competition doesn't care about branding, optics, or whether the timing is convenient for your narrative. How many fighters watched that fight and felt conflicting emotions simultaneously? Relief that the sport defended itself, but fear that the same spotlight could turn on them if they ever misjudged the gap between confidence and delusion. The aftermath matters more than the fight itself. Fallout is where careers pivot, where management teams reassess strategy, where matchmaking philosophies change, and where fans recalibrate what they're willing to believe the next time someone makes a big promise. There's also a lesson about patience here. Joshua didn't rush to prove anything. He waited for the opening that was always going to present itself. That kind of patience only comes from years of being punished for impatience. What makes this linger is that it didn't feel cruel or excessive, it felt surgical, which somehow makes it more damning because there was no chaos to hide behind, just methodical dismantling that left nowhere to point blame except inward. The sport needed this moment even if it didn't want it. Without periodic reality checks, boxing risks drifting too far into pure theater, and theater without genuine risk eventually becomes empty regardless of how flashy the production values are. There's a quiet reckoning happening now, not just for one fighter, but for an entire approach to selling fights. Audiences may still love spectacle, but they just got reminded how much they respect authenticity when it finally shows up. This will change how crossover fights get discussed going forward. Crossover implies mutual respect between disciplines, not one side borrowing credibility without fully earning it through genuine trial by fire. The psychological damage might outlast the physical injuries. Once doubt creeps in at this level, it doesn't leave easily, and doubt is the one opponent you can't train away with conditioning or financial resources. What stays with me most is how quickly admiration transforms into ruthless scrutiny when the protective shield drops. The same crowd that buys into the dream will dissect it mercilessly once it fails. That swing is absolutely brutal if you're not prepared for the shift. There's no clean resolution here, no neat moral to wrap everything up, just a sense that something fundamental shifted and hasn't settled yet, like tectonic plates after an earthquake where the aftershocks are still building momentum. The most unsettling part is knowing this isn't the final chapter. Once the sport exposes a fault line this clearly, the next time it breaks through could be even louder, even messier, and far less forgiving than what we just witnessed.